City County Planning Commission, please come to order. Ms. Martin, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Coppinger?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston? Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioners, you've all had a chance to review the summary minutes of the February 7th meeting. Are there any corrections to those minutes? No corrections, then I would ask for a motion.
Moved.
Thank you, and a second. Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Rich?
Abstain.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Coppinger? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Graham?
Abstain.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Runner, I request that you order that the Warren County zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan with all of its elements effective February 21st, 2019 be introduced as exhibits for tonight's hearings. I'd further request that you order that the staff reports, all attachments, together with the Commission's file for each application be introduced as exhibits. Finally, I'd ask that Ben Peterson, Executive Director, Rachel Hurt, Planner, Monica Ramsey, Planner, be sworn as witnesses before you, and that their oath and qualifications be reflected in the record for each hearing.
You swear to tell the truth before this commission? Thank you all. The January financial report was in the packet. Commissioners, any questions on that? No questions. We'll move on. The preliminary subdivision and site development plans. Any questions on those? And letters of credit and performance bonds, nothing to add. We have none. So that will bring us right into unfinished business. Our first item tonight for public hearing is 2019-02 Flume. Keystone Development Group, LLC, has filed an application for a future land use map amendment containing approximately 39.1132 acres located on tracts of land at 0 Veterans Memorial Lane and 0 Russellville Road, with frontage on Hickory Street and Walnut Street, located between Veterans Memorial Lane, Russellville Road, Stonehenge Avenue, and Robin Avenue, from high-density residential, commercial, and mixed-use residential to commercial and high-density residential. And also on docket number 2019-04ZBG, the applicant has filed to rezone that same land, that 39.1132 acres, same location, from agriculture, RM3, which is multifamily residential, highway business, and floodplain, to RM4 multifamily residential, highway business, and floodplain with a general development plan. And we'll have the staff report from Ms. Hurt.
Thank you, Chair Runner.
And Ms. Hurd, if I might interrupt for just a second. This hearing began at our last meeting on February 7. Because there was testimony taken at the last hearing, only those commissioners who have heard all of the testimony may vote on this application, these two applications, when the votes are taken. So consequently, even though Mr. Rich and Mr. Graham and Ms. Balance are here tonight, they will not be participating in this hearing or voting on these two applications because they have not heard all of the testimony.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
No problem. All right. So you should have a memo at your seats that we included with your packet. And I'm not going to go through the entire staff report again, but I will touch on a few new items that you should have at your seat. First of all, you should have a revised set of development plan conditions that we received late this afternoon, and I'll get to those in just a second. You should also have a letter from an adjoining property owner who I believe also submitted a letter for the last hearing, but has submitted another letter, again, for your consideration. And then I also just wanted to touch briefly on a few other items. So if you'll recall at the last meeting, we mentioned that there was a signal warrant study that had been conducted for the proposed development. And since that time, KYTC had requested that signal warrant study be updated. And they have done that, and I just wanted to note that even after revising it at their request, the warrant analysis still finds that the proposed development would meet the signal warrants. And so just wanted to note that. And then one more item that was included in the memo, if you recall, there was discussion about proposed connections with the adjacent subdivision, including Hickory Street and Walnut Street. And the staff did reach out to the Public Works Department regarding these connections, and they've stated that they are in agreement and in support of these connections as was intended with the installation of the existing stub streets. And they further concur with the signal warrant study conclusions that more traffic will be coming through the new development than would be headed back through Spring Hill and other adjacent neighborhoods, given the convenience and ease of access to veterans, and do not expect traffic levels to rise above what would be seen for a normal residential street for the Spring Hill neighborhood. And so that was basically copied directly from correspondence that we had received from them. So with that, I'm going to jump to the revised development plan conditions, and I'm going to touch on just the ones that changed. The conditions for the commercial portion of the proposal did not change. The revised set that you have is for the multifamily proposal. And so I'm going to start out with number 2. Number 2 states that the property may be developed into a maximum of 624 dwelling units. Previously, at our prior meeting, the proposal was 662, so they have reduced that from 662 to 624. And for anyone who is curious, that would make the new proposed density at 624, it would now be 18.61 dwelling units per acre, and previously the proposed density would have been 19.74. Next, I'll call your attention to number 7, that states that new structures constructed on the property will not exceed 3 stories in height, exclusive of basements and garages or storage areas. The previous proposal called for 4 stories. So they've dropped from 4 stories to 3, exclusive of basements and storage areas. Going to jump on to the next page. There are 3 new conditions that I will outline for you. Starting out with number 11, the developer shall establish a neighborhood association for the subject properties. All lot owners within the property shall be required to join and participate financially in the neighborhood association. Number 13 is also new. The developer and neighborhood association will specify a uniform color scheme for all buildings so as to allow uniformity in appearance. No more than 2 brick colors that blend in style and color. No more than 1 roof color. No more than 1 trim color. No more than 3 colors of cement board plank siding that blend in style and color with all other exterior building products and color schemes. In addition, the subject properties shall have uniform plans with consistent and or complementary roof lines and architectural details, including columns, gable brackets, railings, etc. Finally, the subject properties shall have uniform signage. And then number 14 is also new. No buildings, excluding garages or storage buildings, constructed to the east of the extension of Hickory Street, said area consisting of approximately 17.31 acres as depicted on the attached Exhibit A, and that is the last page here. You'll see that they're calling out basically everything that's in this area here, so those black building footprints. That's the area that is referencing. So it states that this area shall consist of no buildings in this area shall consist of fewer than 4 dwelling units, nor more than 8 dwelling units. Moreover, there shall be no more than 3 building plans allowed for 8-unit buildings, and no more than 2 building plans allowed for 4-unit buildings, for the buildings to be constructed upon that described area. And so those should highlight the major changes since this application was before you 2 weeks ago. And I guess I'll just wrap up with our points to consider. I think during the last hearing we had noted concerns about parking, This should now be alleviated with the reduction in the number of units and limiting the number of units per building to 8 units per building. And then we also had points to consider regarding building height. That has also been alleviated. And we had concerns about the number of units shown on the concept plan exceeding the number of units permitted in the development plan conditions, and that is now, I guess, not a concern. So I'm happy to answer any questions or go over any other portions of the staff report that you may want to revisit. I know the applicants and their attorney are also here, so I think that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Rachel, let me ask this. We went down 40 units roughly, correct?
Yes, roughly.
And 2 weeks ago, we were 350 parking spots short.
Yes.
So how does going down 40 units fix 350 parking spots?
Well, in all actuality, the number of units shown on the plan are not the number of units that are included in the development plan conditions. So if the black building footprints are 8-plex buildings, you should only have, I think, around 272 units. I have that noted somewhere. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so if we assume all of the building footprints in black to be 8-plexes, there are 272 added with the 288 units in the larger multifamily complex to the left, and that would total 560. And so the parking that's shown with these assumed to be 8-plexes would not be an issue.
But if we allow 624 units, will we have a parking spot problem? I understand that's 560, but they're asking for 64 more units.
Sure. And I guess I don't know that you could actually fit that many units on the property.
Okay.
Because at least based on the current layout, you may be able to squeeze in an extra couple of buildings, but at that point in time, we would review it, and if there wasn't enough parking, then it just wouldn't be permitted.
But my question is, if they were able to get 624 units on there, is there enough parking?
Not shown on this plan.
Okay.
I think the reason they are proposing the 6, they may be able to,
624.
yeah, sorry, 624. That was the number that was used for the revised signal warrant analysis, and so I think that's why they chose that number. They may be able to touch more on that.
Any other questions for Ms. Hurt before we hear?
Ms. Hurt, explain number 14 again. I'm just a little confused.
So number 14 is only applicable basically to the black building footprints.
Right.
And that was talking about just the different number of building plans that would be limited to 3 particular building plans for the 8-unit buildings, and there'd be no more than 2 building plans for the 4-unit buildings. And they excluded the yellow building footprints to the left because that's planned to be part of a larger complex. And I think they provided some renderings that may resemble what could be built in that portion of the development. Let me see here. I'll jump to the end. So this, I believe, is similar to what they're envisioning for those yellow building footprints. And then that's the clubhouse.
So on the black, they are not going to be uniformed in size. They will not be all the same size.
That I'm not sure about. They didn't specify a size. They just specified a specific number of plans to say if I want to build an 8-plex, from what I understand, I would have 3 building plans to choose from if I'm going to build an 8-plex. And if I'm going to build a 4-plex, I would only have 2 building plans to choose from.
Do we have those building plans? What they look like?
No. I hear that we might have them.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Rachel, I have a question. You know this L that kicks out, is that 8-plexes, 4-plexes, or what?
No, sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, there we go.
That one that kicks
The little
out?
side piece,
Yes.
those could be 4 or 8 plexes,
It could
according
be.
to this new number 14 that we just went through.
else before we hear from the applicant? Nothing else? Then we'll hear from the applicant, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair Runner and Commissioners. Chris Davenport on behalf of the applicant. I was not here a couple weeks ago. I've been asked to try to smooth out some of the issues that they had the first time, some of the concerns the commissioners had, and frankly, I think we've done that. I don't want to go through the whole application. I don't really deem that's necessary, but I do want to try to expand upon some of the questions some of the commissioners had. I think I can help add some guidance to that. The first question was about the different floor plans in what I will call the right section, the section that's predominantly black on your concept plan. Now, the first thing I want to caution you against is these were done prior to us working out what I will call the uniformity condition, and that's primarily 13, okay? So if you look at DPC 13, it says the entire property will be uniform in color scheme, in roof color, okay? So these depictions were done prior to that. So you may see this one and say, well, that looks mostly yellow, well, the other one was red, okay? That's not, we're beyond that at this point. But the purpose of these would be to show basically the scale of the different floor plans. And if I can get a little closer, I'll try to do this. The different floor plans are necessitated by the mix of bedroom units or bedroom types. So you have a 2-bedroom, 4-plex, a 3-bedroom, 8-plex, a 2-bedroom, 8-plex. I guess this would be the best comparison. This is more apple to apple because there are 2 different floor plans for the 8-plex variety. And to the question, the question was, would you have 5 different sizes? I'm sure the floor plans to the square foot are not exact. But the real difference in the plans is not so much the square footage, but the number of bedrooms inside, if that makes sense. The building envelopes themselves between the different 8-plexes do not vary greatly, if that makes sense. I think I'm getting maybe some confused looks, but.
Chris, I think one of the issues from 2 weeks ago was having a complex where all the buildings look the same. And I think in the past, probably year and a half, 2 years, you've seen this committee go to more of a uniformity of the buildings, same color, same size, where even though they might be owned by 39 different owners, it all looks the same.
Well, I would say this, Commissioner Volkert, as far as the same size, the 3 different floor plans for the 8-plexes won't look any different from the outside. They're just a different mix of bedrooms on the inside. Obviously, a 4-plex will not be the same size as an 8-plex, okay? But what we've tried to do, and my understanding from the first hearing is there was a lot of concern about the right-hand side, okay? And with the DPCs that were presented 2 weeks ago, the right-hand side could have been a mix of duplexes, 4-plexes, 8-plexes, 12-plexes, okay? And we've narrowed that down to 4 and 8-plexes, okay? Would the 8-plex be bigger than the 4-plex? Yes. If you look at the floor plans, they're the same building heights, though. They're the same number of stories. So I think we have really brought that spectrum in much tighter than what was presented to you last time. The plan primarily is 8-plexes, and ideally, every one of them would be 8-plexes. Anytime in front of the Planning Commission you're doing DPCs, the balance is certainty versus some flexibility, okay? Financially speaking, if the plan and the parking and everything worked out for 8-plexes, they'll all be 8-plexes. The flexibility that's built in here is if the lot configuration and the lot sizes necessitates maybe the odd 4-plex, that's what we're trying to reserve here. And again, from a roof line, there wouldn't be any differentiation between the 8-plex and the 4-plex on that right-hand side. Again, I'm only referring to the right-hand side. that's primarily DPC 14. I know there was some confusion about how that reads, and that's probably too much lawyer jargon, but basically, the impact of that DPC is the right-hand side of the development will not have anything less than a fourplex nor greater than an eightplex. And when I spoke with staff, Ms. Hurt commented that the additional kind of uniformity with regard to the finite number of floor plans would be helpful. And since we already knew the floor plans we wanted to use, we went ahead and used those numbers. 3 for 8 and 2 for the 4. Again, those are multiples because of the different bedroom setups
So let me ask you this. So I come and I buy a lot, and I buy a lot for an eightplex. Buying that lot, will I get the plans of one of these eightplex buildings I pick, so the plan has been drawn and stamped and all that, all the same?
have to.
Okay.
In fact, whenever, my understanding of the process, and this is probably a bit above my pay grade, but the reason these DPCs are so important is that when you go to pull a permit, to permit that construction, you have to be in compliance with these plan conditions. And so at that point, the permitting inspector will make sure, wait a minute, which plan are you using? You've got to pick from these 5. And if it's from an eightplex, it's these 3. You have these 3 plans you can build. And again, on top of that, Commissioner Volkert, number 13 says that once you pick that plan, you then have to stay within the color palette. 2 colors of brick that coordinate with each other, 1 color of siding, 1 color of trim, 1 color of roof, so that all that exterior is consistent on both sides of the development, just not on one, but on both. 13 applies to the entirety of the property, so that we don't have mixed colors on either side of this extension of Hickory Street.
Would they be willing to go to 1 color on every building, the same?
I think I think some people would tell you, Commissioner Volkert, that 1 color, that monochromatic look, I'm not sure that is very, not everyone likes that, frankly. I can talk, Mr. Lucas is here on behalf of them. I
think that was one of our concerns, was the mixture of colors.
I'll say this, from the staff, I've received 2 previous approved set of DPCs. I actually have fewer numbers in these than were in those. On many of those DPCs, there are multiple options for trim and things like that. We tried to even went more narrow than that. I think the only thing that we have multiples of is in the brick and the cement. But even that says it must complement and blend in style and color. So, again, sometimes we stand up here and we try to take authorship of these DPCs. You all know these are usually suggested to us by staff. They're highly regurgitated from other projects in the county, and that's what we did on this one, except I tried to narrow it some.
I think our biggest concern was that you're going to have different people come in and buy different lots. And one could put pink, one could put purple, one could put yellow, green, etc. So we were trying to get color schemes that would coordinate and look nice as one big development, even though you're going to have different people buy each lot. And that's our biggest concern, is we don't want green, purple, red, whatever. We want all the color schemes to be similar, if not identical.
And that's perfectly reasonable, and I would be remiss if I didn't admit that I've stood right here on other applications and asked for that, okay? I've done that myself on behalf of other clients. And Ms. Clark, that's what, I think if you look at 13, that's what we've done. The developer will pick those colors. And if you're gonna build in this development, you will have to abide by that. And I would assume, and I know when I made the comment earlier about the building plans and the process that when you pull permits, that'll have to be approved. I think I saw Mr. Peterson shaking his head affirmatively, so I think I may have understood that process correctly.
Mostly, yes, that is correct. What we would do in this case is we would have to have some sort of confirmation from the developer or the homeowners association that there has been approval of that color but we would not be able to police that color at the permit level. But we would, the way that is handled is we would have to have approval from whatever that
Understood.
that authority is.
So again, I'll just reiterate 13 that talks about the palette and the color options. That does apply to the entirety of the property.
Would you mind a sentence that says that? I don't see a provision that says that.
It applies to the entirety?
Yes.
Well, it doesn't have the qualifying language like 14 does, but I'm happy to put at the end, this DPC applies
To the entire development.
To the
To the entire residential development.
and these only deal with the multifamily, not the commercial, but you okay with that, Luke, with that? Yeah.
You have the limit.
The other issue, and Rachel was correct, on the number of units, Mr. Volkert, that's the same number that was utilized in the signal warranty study.
So would y'all be willing to go to 560?
Well, conceivably, I don't think we can build beyond that. The issue then becomes, I'd like to marry the study because I don't want to cause any problems with the study. The signal here, I think, everyone agrees is to the benefit of everyone. And so I don't want to cause any issue down the road with amending this application inconsistent with what's on that study. But I'll point this out, and you all have heard me say this before. There is no parking variance requested here. Okay, there is no request here for any parking spaces less than what the zoning ordinance requires
So then why not go to the 560?
because of the signal study.
I'm just going to be honest with you, Chris. I think you should go to the 560.
Well, and this may be above my pay grade also, Commissioner, but the concern, again, I have is that is the revised application, not jiving with what was submitted on the study. And whether the DOT comes back at some later point and says, well, we're not sure that signal's warranted at this point.
But if we're going to use this as our Exhibit A, this Exhibit A would not be exact. I mean, we're going to use that and record these, and this Exhibit A, it's not what you're saying exactly. This still has way too many units drawn on it.
Commissioner Clark, it does not. I don't think so. The way the parking got calculated last time, as I understand it, and Rachel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but she took the number of units on that concept plan and assumed that they would be 12 plexes, which we've now eliminated with that DPC 14. Am I right about that, Rachel? Okay. So at the last hearing, when it was discussed that it was conceivable under those restrictions to build those buildings up so that they were 12 plexes, then you have a deficiency in your parking spots. But as it's now conceived, limiting to 8 units, it's within 20 spaces.
Which way?
The 600,
Which way?
the 624 units is?
No, the footprints shown on this concept, if they're 8 plexes on the right-hand side, the parking shown on this exhibit is within 20 of the requirement.
Way.
20, I think it's actually exactly 26.
Short or short?
But that was assuming, I believe, 2-bedroom units. So if they're going to do a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, you could make up the difference just based on the plan that you choose.
But if they're selling these lots off to individuals, that'll have to be done prior to them selling any of the lots off, correct?
It would be reviewed as each permit is applied for. So
If they run out at the end, they can't sell the last 2 lots?
well, each lot would be reviewed individually to make sure that it meets the requirement for that particular building. So if I buy this lot right here, and I'm going to build 1 8-plex, I have to show on my building permit that the parking provided on that specific lot meets the requirements for the building that's constructed on that lot.
Another way, we can't, or they can't construct get the permits and construct the building and say, we'll worry about the parking later. Fair statement?
Right. Each lot would be reviewed individually. So I think, like, for example, this lot here may have 2 buildings on the same lot. When we review the permit for that lot, we would verify that the parking provided meets the requirements to serve the units that are physically on that piece of property.
Let me ask you this. This obviously is one parcel.
We're rezoning one parcel, yes.
I mean, but it's all one parcel, correct?
As I understand today, it is correct.
Okay. My question is, can we keep the right side as RM3?
Issue with, and if you look, Commissioner, I mean, the obvious statement is if you're going to build with this height, with these number of units, it is RM3, right?
That's right.
Except for the lot sizes. The lot sizes are different under RM4. Parking's no different. Parking is not dictated by the zoning classification. It's based upon the bedrooms, basically. Okay? So the RM4 is not to seek any restriction in parking or less parking. It's not to build, we're limiting what we can build by our DPCs in the RM3 class, but the need for the RM4 is the lot sizes. That is why we're asking for RM4. Basically, a RM3 development on RM4 lots.
Rachel, Ben, are y'all good with that?
Fortunately for us, it's your decision. So I'll state,
we like
I'll state
your
that.
opinion.
I would say I would not necessarily agree totally with the last statement that you have RM4 development on RM3 lots, because all of those restrictions, conditions, all of those regulations for RM3 go along with RM3 zone, and RM4 goes with RM4. So they all work together, the landscaping, the lot sizes, the lot coverage, and all of that. So I'll make that statement. And then the only other thing is with the traffic warrant study, whether it's 560 or 662, and then not jiving. You know, if you can only build 560, that's fine. It throws it back to the state. It's not like we're not going to tell the state. So I don't understand why, if that is a desire, why that can't just be changed, because the state's going to know anyway through our new review process. So other than those kind of nuances, you know.
And say that again, the 560 and the,
So the signal warrant study is based on the 624, 662. I'm
Right.
getting my numbers
24.
getting my numbers confused now. I haven't looked at this as much as Rachel, so please jump in anytime. But the 624. So if the signal warrant is based on 624, but they can only build 560, the state, KYTC, is ultimately going to know that anyway. Now, so the warrant study, if they want it redone at that time, they'll have to do it. So at this level, I'm not sure how much that would really matter, because the way we do the development review now, it's going to be known either way, whether we tell the Planning Commission it's going to be 560 or 62, or tell the state it's going to be 624, 560. Ultimately, that's going to come out during that development review process. So, 6 and 1, half dozen the other on that point, I think, to me.
I guess the last thing I'll say about this, and I'm happy to take any other questions you have, and I know I'm relatively new to this. I've tried to get caught up to speed in the last week or so, is when I met with staff today, we did our best, and I say we because it was a collective effort, to address the uniformity. We looked at other developments that have been approved in the county recently, because this is not the first of these that you've seen. You certainly haven't had a lot of them, but it's not the first. And we tried to use those, and frankly, we tried to get this outside nothing against some of the developments in that area, but there's a lot of lack of uniformity in that area. And I think that was the topic of some of the discussion here 2 weeks ago. And I think, and staff, Rachel and Ben can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with these DPCs, we've taken this development out of that context that's in that area generally. Would you all agree with that compared to what's out there now?
I would agree that we helped you do the best you could with the information you gave us this morning, and then we got this at 4 o'clock and have had that amount of time to look at it.
Chris, I agree with you that in the area, there is a lot of difference. But I think that's some of the things that we're trying to fix.
Right.
I understand that. But if you look at these conditions, you've got one roof color. You've got 2 brick that can be used. You've got 3 colors of cement board that must match the brick. Okay, I can name a number of developments in this area right now that the same building has 2 colors of brick on it and a couple colors of cement siding that look beautiful. Okay, these conditions, I think, go about as far as you can to say this is not going to be a willy-nilly do as you see fit. You must get approval. You must build these plans. You must use these colors. And again, those are the same uniformity restrictions that have been used on other developments here in the last year.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners, before we open it up to questions from the audience?
Chair Runner, one more, I think, clarifier I want to make, and that
Yes,
is
sir.
when Ms. Hurt read DPC, the condition 7, the intent of 7 is to exclude from the inclusion of stories basement garages and basement storage areas. So when, no offense, but when you read that, you kind of read it to exclude basements or garages or storage areas. And technically, if you read it that way, that means you could have a 4-story garage or something. That's not the intent. On the left-hand side of the development, there's some topographical issues. To get roof lines even, there'll have to be some basements built up partly above, partly below grade. And they want the ability to use those as a garage or a small storage area. And the issue there is we want to make sure there's no confusion of how we're calculating stories.
So is there a comma between basement
Should
and
not be.
garages?
Basement qualifies garages and,
So the only basements will be used for garages?
not necessarily, but if put it this way, if you have a garage under a structure that's a basement garage, that doesn't count as one of the 3 stories. That's the intent.
So storage areas could be basement storage areas
Correct.
or
Then-
basement garages.
Correct.
You're saying in those, there would be,
Well, no, because I'm just saying the basement doesn't count as a story. You're going to have 3 stories above grade. I probably shouldn't even mention, I think I've made that more confusing, but there has been in past when permits are pulled and they look at conditions, there can be an issue about whether that basement counts as a story or not. And I just wanted to clarify that, and I didn't want there being confusion with you all. The idea is that we're 3 stories above grade. The basement doesn't count as one of those 3.
Will there be living units in the basement?
It wouldn't be a basement. It wouldn't be a basement garage. So that's the point. Only basement garages or basement storage units are excluded from the story calculation.
But you'll also have, out here, you'll have 3-story buildings beside 2-story buildings, possibly.
Possibly.
Okay.
Correct.
Other questions, commissioners, before I ask for questions from the audience? Anything else? Do we have any opposition to this request, just by a show of hands? Opposition? Okay. You have questions, or if you'd like to make a statement? Yes, if you come forward. We'll get your name and address and swear you in and let you make a statement or ask a question.
Ready? My name's Craig Patterson.
And your address?
It's 139 Spring Hill Avenue,
And you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just here to make a comment. I'm not
Yeah,
against
that-
this development.
Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I also attend Faith Methodist Church, which is to the left of the yellow.
Yes, sir.
And I didn't know if there was an egress easement. We've talked about that at church. We might be losing some of our property. Didn't know about that. Like I said, I don't know if that's, we just talked about that.
Right now, there's a platted right-of-way. If there's already an existing right-of-way for the cul-de-sac that's shown on here.
Okay.
So that's already
Okay.
platted and dedicated right-of-way.
As far as going, if they cut through, have they thought about maybe doing a roundabout so that people won't be flying through there?
I might need to defer to the applicants on that. I'm not sure about the final design or the plans for that.
And then still the parking spaces is a concern to me, especially with, you don't know really how many people are going to be living in each unit. And say, for instance, the holidays, if people are coming over, visiting, is there going to be enough room for, like, say, an ambulance or something to get through if people are parking on the side of the road?
Parking requirements and the zoning ordinance assume visitor parking. So it's not just, we don't just assume enough for the residents. There's also a visitor ratio that's factored into the required number of spaces.
And the stormwater plan, has there been one developed for this property? Because the reason I'm saying this, there's a house in the 300 block, and where the water and I guarantee it's flowing right now. And this is not even with all this going on. So.
I'll have to defer to the applicants as to how far into the design on that they may or may not be. But ultimately there would have to be approved stormwater plans through the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, ma'am, if you would come forward. And we'll get your name and address, please, and swear you in.
I was sworn in last time,
Well,
so.
if you would-
Catherine Lowe. My address is 314 Robin Road Avenue.
And you swear to tell the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
One thing he just mentioned about the water problem down at the bottom of the hill, and I know that they have put these drainage pipes down alongside the veterans' side, and that's to help for the drainage coming off of this piece of land, and it's going directly down to Jennings Creek. And what Craig spoke about on the house at the bottom of the hill, they have a terrible water problem with the rain and with the water coming up into the yard up next to the back side of the house. So what's going to happen when all that water's rolling down the hill, just adding to more problems in Jennings Creek? But that was the issue that he was talking about, and that's just an addition to it. The one thing I wanted to mention was at the last meeting when when I made the comment about if you have a piece of land that's just so big at a certain measurement and you can only put so many people on it, and then when you look at this and what the buildings that are presumed to be taking up a certain amount of space, and then the parking lots, as far as for each unit, and I am questioning also the extra buildings, the social building that you're planning on, and the swimming pool, and whatever else that you've got on the agenda. And what is the estimated width of the space that you're gonna have for, like, your streets going through there? Like, for your navigation in it? Because you not only are gonna have cars going in and out of there, you have other, much larger vehicles that are gonna be going in there. You have this apartment complex, you have drawn out, but you're gonna have kids in those units, those families that rent those apartments, and they're gonna have kids. And then you've got big school buses that are gonna be going through there, and it isn't gonna be just one, it'll be more than that. Because in Spring Hill, in the subdivision, there are quite a number of them that go through there, and that is the city schools and the Warren County schools. I know the first block of Spring Hill those are city school kids, and then the rest of it is Warren County. So, and then you have not only just the buses that are going to be picking up and bringing back, just the school kids that are in those buildings, but you also have some special needs buses that go through there. Have you accounted for the space than some of the big trucks that would go in there? Like, when I say big, something that is, wider than what a car is, and that would, like a FedEx truck or a United Parcel and that kind of thing, and you're going to have some navigation room, and especially for the buses going in and then out and then doing that twice a day. And you can't have people blocking spaces that is needed for that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of things that have been left out of the picture. I mean, things that it's like these people aren't thinking about. And all of a sudden one day, it's all going to hit. And then you have other, anything that would be for any repair work that would have to come in there. You've got a garbage thing that has to be taken care of. So if you're going to fill it up with all these units, and then the car situation with the parking spaces, and then, you have to figure it out.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't think the figuring has been put together right. So.
I can, yes,
I've
ma'am.
got
Would you
Answer
please?
some of that regarding
Yes,
the road widths and travelway widths and parking areas. We have minimum requirements in our ordinance for travelway widths and parking space size, the sizes for parking spaces, and those are standard requirements throughout the community. So
I realize that
we would have to make sure that all of those requirements were met before they could begin to develop any portion of this property.
What are you going to do when you start running out of space? When you start figuring all that? And then if you run out of the space that you think that you have enough room for, but
They would have to show that on their building plans at the permitting portion of the process. They would have to show the footprint of the buildings and the parking areas, and we would make sure that all those requirements are met before they even begin construction.
well, I know that. I know there are specified measurements that are already rules. I know that. I was told that today by her.
Thank you, ma'am.
But it's just something to think about.
we have anyone else that would like to ask a question or make a statement? No one else? Yes, sir.
Sometimes it's good to sit down and talk to your client just a little bit. You learn some things that we can do, and so I'd like to make some revisions to try to address what I can of the concerns I think the commission may still have. In number 2, Mr. Moore, I'd like to amend the maximum number to 600.
Out of curiosity, Chris, why not go to the 560?
Yeah. We want, that leaves the developer, what, 8% variance in what's shown there in the total. So we may be able to have slightly more than what's on the map, on that concept plan, if we have adequate parking. And number 2, we're hopeful that that number's still close enough to 624 that the light issue doesn't become a problem. In number 8, my client will agree that all residential buildings in the large apartment complex shall be 3 stories in height, exclusive of basement garages or storage areas.
7.
In number, I'm adding it to the end of number 8. Yeah. And likewise,
Why do we need to add that? Why isn't that
well, there
covered
was
in 7?
Commissioner Volker asked that, would it be possible to have 2 stories next to 3 stories?
Well, I was asking that on the right side.
Oh, all that, I haven't got to that one yet.
Okay.
Because number 8 talks about the clubhouse.
That applies to, in the large apartment complex, which is the left-hand side. So if you see on this concept plan, I think this is the clubhouse right here and the amenities. So in number 8, what I'm suggesting is to include a condition that requires these buildings to be 3 stories. And then in number 14, add a sentence that says all residential buildings shall be 2 stories in height, which means, Commissioner Volkert, these are now all 2 stories, these are now all 3 stories.
Gotcha.
There will be no 3-story buildings east of Hickory Street.
Correct, and no 2-story buildings west of Hickory Street.
Let me ask you again, are you guys willing on the right-hand side to go to one color for the buildings and brick?
I've talked with Mr. Lucas about that, and I think it may be a difference in beauty's in the art of in the eye of the beholder kind of thing. That architecturally, I think they want to be able to have multicolored brick buildings, frankly. But again, those colors will have to be picked by the developer, and they'll have to be used throughout. So.
Still confused about number 8.
Yes, ma'am.
Large apartment complex will include a clubhouse, pool, and other amenities. So I'm confused about what you're talking about, 3 stories.
Okay, so Commissioner Clark, if you look, can you look up here? So basically, the development, when number 8 refers to the large apartment complex, it is this development, the 3-story portion now that we've designated, and it has the clubhouse and those amenities. And then this is the 2-story portion, divided by the extension of Hickory. We think that's probably going to be called something else, but for our purposes today, that's the extension of Hickory Street.
All residential structures west of Hickory Street will be 3 stories in height.
Correct.
The clubhouse, pool, or other amenities may be less.
Correct. Well, that's why I said residential.
That's why it says all residential structures.
Yeah, if we have garages or whatever, those are not going to be 3 stories.
All residential structures west of Hickory Street shall be 3 stories in height.
The other thing my client wanted me to stress, and so I feel obliged to do it, is the concession to 4 and 8-plex they felt like was important to them. That was a big decision they made. But I think that goes farther to address the uniformity than anything else. Knowing that you're going to have 2-story on this side, 3-story on this side, you're not going to have a confluence of roof lines and those things. You now know you're going to have a uniformity in building plans, in building size. Hopefully that addresses the concerns that this board has had. And then the last thing I'll leave you with, is that when I got this project, you know, I've gone too far. Do we have the aerial that shows, like the picture?
More.
Is there a broader one than that? I wish there was, because if this angle here pulled back further, you would really see basically the whole this property represents in the development of our city. It is a significant infill opportunity as I see it. You guys always, you always hear the debate of don't build multifamily out. Don't go out with it. Find a spot inside. My client tells me the challenge of this site is it's got challenges topographically. You know, the topography is a challenge. There's the drainage issues that they're working around. They'll have to work around, and that's why basically you probably have more density than what you've seen or you may have thought. But the fact of the matter is this is a great infill opportunity, and I wish I could pull out further. Today at the Commission's office, we pulled out the GIS map, and across Veterans Memorial, highly populated, dense area. And so I think that's something that should be pointed out here. Hopefully we've addressed the uniformity issues, knowing that there will be a color palette to choose from, a finite number of building plans to choose from, and frankly that is consistent with the multifamily developments on the larger scale that we've seen here. And that's where we pulled these from. So I'd urge you all to pass this tonight. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Other questions? Comments? Any from commissioners before I call for a motion? And you know we have to act on 2. We have the Flume amendment, and should that pass, we'll need to go to the zone change request. Anything?
Mr. Runner, can I
Yes.
get Mr. Davenport to come back to the
Yes.
podium for just a moment? We're still trying to debate what 7, 8, and 14 mean.
Okay.
So paragraph 8 will now read, the large apartment complex will include a clubhouse, pool, and other amenities. All residential structures west of Hickory Street shall be 3 stories in height.
Exclusive of basement
Exclusive.
garages and/or storage areas. And I'll tell you, that is the area where to get the roof lines to match up, that's where there's a drop in elevation where there'll be some basements.
So can we now delete number 7?
I think we can, because we're limiting 2 in the 2 stories in the later. Yeah, I think we can.
Paragraph 14, we've limited all residential structures east of Hickory Street to buildings no more than 2 stories in height.
Correct.
Have the change to 600, is that correct? That takes care of all the corrections.
Ask one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
We're still using the 2 streets in Spring Hill. We're still cutting those and using those. And did they work out anything with the church? Can you still not cut through the church parking lot to help alleviate some of the traffic?
Commissioner Clark, I am rather ignorant about the church issue. I'm not aware of what that is, frankly.
The last time they said that the church said nobody could drive through there, that they had worked out some kind of agreement that people would not drive from this through the church area.
I mean, when this is.
We're trying to keep some out of the subdivision and let some
Yeah, I
go
don't-
through the church area.
You know, when this is built out, the need to drive through a church, I would assume, is gone, because this is gonna be signaled, and I'm not entirely sure where the church is, Commissioner Clark, okay? But, the issue about, right there.
Yes.
So,
We're just trying not to, everything go back in that subdivision. If some could go out that church area, that would alleviate some of the neighbors' concerns.
might
Doesn't connect.
clarify that. Currently, that church access is private, owned by the church. They will get to control whatever they do from there. The cul-de-sac you see outlined, that is currently platted and established right-of-way and is public right-of-way to be extended upon. So the church kind of has their access through that now. Once that's developed, then they will obviously be able to connect to that. Assuming it's developed, the church can then decide whatever they want to do with their private property there in that private travelway. But we cannot require any member of the public to go through the private church parking lot.
Did they work out anything on Russellville Road? They're still not going to be in kind of out toward Russellville Road?
My understanding, as discussed at the last meeting, though, would still have a connection, and I believe it's a private travelway. Is that correct? Through this, I'm sorry, down here. Down through that area. Mostly, I think that was done for the existing developments that are going on here to be able to come through this development, more so than probably the other.
And I think, you know, the comment that Rachel read reiterates this. The light that comes with this development and the thoroughfare that comes with this development serves the surrounding properties much more than their thoroughfares serve this property. And the comment she read was they expect, and I would expect this, there'll be much more traffic coming from Spring Hill through this than from here through Spring Hill. Because currently, now it's not on this map, but to get to Veterans Memorial, if you lived in Spring Hill, you would drive basically up and to the left through that neighborhood, through various roads to come out where the Domino's Pizza Light is. Okay, up closer to Morgantown Road on Veterans Memorial. So with this light, instead of those residents needing to do that, you know, I think the DOT anticipates, and we do too, they'll come out through our development at this light much quicker without having to go through the rest of that neighborhood. And again, that's the comment that the DOT gave.
Any other questions? Any other comments, commissioners? Then I will ask for a motion, please, and the first one will be concerning the Flume Amendment.
9,
Yeah, we'll need you to come to the mic, ma'am. You have a question?
Questioning if it's even been presented. I have, I've got paperwork from planning and zoning, and I was given a letter that Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, who live in Michigan,
Yes, ma'am.
but they own a home
We have a
there.
copy of that letter, yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay, so what my question is, has there been anything discussed about putting what these people called a buffer, but it could be anything from a high fence or trees, plant additional trees planted or anything like that that gives a block from, when I say a block, in other words, to not be viewing the back side or whatever side you're going to see of these buildings. Has there been any interest in them doing this to, you know, make it a little more comfortable, so you're not looking at this stuff all the time? And all these people up and down Robin, that, you know, when they're in their backyard and sitting out there, do you think they want to look at all this? No. So isn't there some, like, a big tall fence or some kind of a block, let's say that?
I can help answer that.
Block
So
out.
if you'll look at number 10 in your development plan conditions, the applicants are proposing to maintain all existing trees located on the property line adjacent to Spring Hill subdivision which have a caliper of 12 inches or greater and which are located within 10 feet of the property line. And then in addition to that, our zoning ordinance requires minimum buffers and minimum plantings, a mix of evergreen and deciduous trees between that neighborhood and the proposed development. That would be required by our ordinance.
Well, I mean, it would have to be something that is not just doing some little favor. I mean, it would have to be a substantial
There's
thing.
a specific number of trees per linear foot
Well,
that would have to be installed.
I went through this a long time back when the church was going to be built. And I requested at that meeting, it was over at the courthouse, that like at least a row of trees to be planted, just to block out some of the activity that would be going on in the church yard. And they planted some pine trees, and it didn't take long before they died. And so it's, you know, it would be nice if it was some kind of a substantial, something that's going to last,
Thank you, ma'am.
not just trees that are going to die.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
We also have maintenance requirements. I'm not familiar with the church property.
Yes,
I wasn't
ma'am.
here when that was developed, but today in our current ordinance, there are maintenance requirements where if things die, they have to be replaced and replanted, yes.
Thank you so much.
So there are 9 of you eligible to vote on these 2 applications. Of course, it will require 5 affirmative votes to take action.
Thank you. Motion.
Make a motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment docket number 2019-2 Flume based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed Flume amendment has met the directive to amend the Flume as outlined in LU 114 in the comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. We need a second.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coppinger,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark,
No.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner. The vote is 5-4, so passed. Need a motion?
Act on the zone change request.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon a general development plan docket number 2019-4 ZBG. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objective and actions presented in this staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion be a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. We need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark,
No.
Commissioner Coppinger, Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Gay,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am.
5-4.
Motion carried with opposition. Our recommendation will be for approval. Thank you. Next item will be from new business, docket number 2019-05ZBG,
We need to bring the commission.
We have a couple missing, yes.
The TV should be on. They should know that they.
B&B Cleaning Incorporated has filed an application to rezone a portion of a tract of land containing approximately .273 acre located at 0 Memphis Junction Road, bounded by Russellville Road and Maple Lane, from RS1A Single Family Residential to General Business with a General Development Plan. We'll get everyone in, and then we'll let Ms. Ramsey begin the staff report.
Ma'am?
Okay.
There she is.
Didn't want to start without you, Mary Bell.
The wait was worth it.
It was, wasn't it? Yes.
All right, well, we had a pre-application conference for this property you see outlined in yellow here on September 14th of last year. The applicants are requesting this zone change in order to combine the property with a larger tract on Russellville Road and develop a mixture of multifamily residential units, office and retail space, and a workshop. So referring to combining it with this property just to the north of it here. So the property was originally zoned agriculture and rezoned from agriculture to single-family residential in 1966, and then that was just converted from R1 to RS1A in 2001. So the property on the I'll go to the future land use map, designated as mixed-use residential on the future land use map. The proposed general business zone is a potentially compatible zoning designation in the mixed-use residential flume category and may be appropriate if this body determines that the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding area. Below that, to the bottom of the page, the points to consider. This proposal is consistent with the flume and mixed-use residential category. The proposed development complies with the majority of the site characteristics review criteria. The proposed general development plan complies with the majority of the review criteria for site design and compatibility and meets the minimum requirements in the zoning ordinance. And if this application is approved, the subject property will be combined with the adjacent tract at the corner of Russellville Road and Memphis Junction Road as developed as part of such tract. And I will go ahead and bring that up so we can see a little bit better what we're talking about here. On page 2, I'm going to go down to site characteristics review, the layout, lot sizes, and setbacks. One thing I want to point out, I already mentioned a couple times, this is proposed to be combined. One thing of note in that section is that a variance was granted for this portion of the development by the Board of Adjustments in 2017 for the building to be located 30 feet from the rear property line. This variance does not apply to the tract that is subject to this rezoning application. The zoning ordinance requires a 40-foot setback along the southern property line adjacent to a single-family residential use for this portion of the development. All right, below that, the only thing I'll point out there is that there are several mature trees located on the property. Many of these will be removed to accommodate future development of the site. Additional landscaping will be installed to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Going on to page 3, one thing you'll notice, and I believe you should have a copy of the binding elements for the adjacent tract, since they were still called binding elements. One thing that I just wanted to bring up is that for the building materials review, those are just from the adjacent tract, which states at least 75% brick, stone, masonry, or cementitious material, architectural metal panels utilizing concealed fasteners, glass, or other modern masonry material, and the use of plain face block is prohibited. Those binding elements also say that for the adjacent property, which this would be included with, ultimately require that all buildings constructed on the property face Russellville Road. So I'll go down to the general development plan, or development plan conditions. You'll see there are only two there. The first one is that this property shall adhere to the statement of binding elements, which you have attached there. And number two, a revised plat must be submitted to the Planning Commission combining the subject property with Lot 1-1 of Major Plat Book 41, page 42, as recorded in the Office of the Clerk of the Warren County Court prior to the issuance of a building permit. There is an update on that one that this is actually in the process of getting signatures on the plat, so it can be recorded combining the two lots, so that's already on its way to compliance if you all choose to grant this application. All right, so just below that, pointing out that you have the attached binding elements. We can answer any questions about that if you prefer. But moving on to page 4, just 4 things to point out that 3 of which are up to you all to determine. One is LU2, to determine if this is a high-quality development that will protect the character of the area. HN1, HN13, determine if this is a suitable infill project that will maintain or improve the existing character and pattern of development within the area. ED1 and ED3, determine if the proposed development will help retain and support an existing local business, and if it will result in an additional business that will help to diversify the local economy. There were 3 items that were out of compliance. They're mentioned there in one section together, LU214, PR17, NCR116, because the existing trees were not addressed, and I believe I mentioned earlier that the intent was to take those out for development. Again, this is essentially an extension of the property there, the larger property at the corner of Russellville Road and Memphis Junction Road. And so I believe that's all I have. They want to combine them to have a cohesive development. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, do you have any questions? No questions? Thank you. Yes, sir.
The binding elements that were adopted previously refers to multifamily dwelling units. So they will be present.
Correct. So their original plan, the building just basically grew into this other lot on their plan, but they still are adhering to all those original building plans. So if you'll see this lot here, this outline here is this existing lot, so you can see how much of that building has went on. But if you look at this, retail and office space is along this leg facing Russellville Road, and then the multifamily is here on this. So that has not changed since the last update.
Any other questions?
You said that has not changed? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, I understand.
That is correct. It has not changed. It's the same. We're just basically adding the extra lot in the workshop area. The building has grown it's grown to encompass that lot.
Any other questions? Nothing else? Thank you, Ms. Ramsey.
Ma'am.
Anything the applicant would like to add? Nothing? Nothing? Okay. Do we have any opposition to this request? No opposition? Any questions from anyone in the audience? No questions? No opposition? Then I will ask for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon a general development plan, docket 2019-5ZBG. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objective and actions and items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. We need a second. Thank you.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coppinger?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Houston?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale? Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried. Our recommendation will be for approval. Thank you. Next item, Docket number 2019-06 ZBG. Elijah Properties LLC has filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately .7002 acre located at 3885 Old Nashville Rd Loop, number 1, from highway business to multifamily residential, RM4, with a general development plan. Have the staff report from Ms. Hurd.
Thank you, Chair Runner. I will point out you do have a revised set of development plan conditions at your seat, and I will note that I take full responsibility for these because they haven't been changed since everything was mailed out. I just didn't copy everything correctly into the staff report, so that's my fault there. But I will highlight the change when we get to it. So we had a pre-application conference on January 22nd for this property. You see here, it's kind of wedged in there between Old Nashville Road Loop number 1 and Nashville Road, and then also the exit from the Natural Parkway is here. We may need some new batteries in our remote. I'll just use this. So you can see the current zone of the property is highway business, and the current use is single-family residential. The future land use designation for the property is high-density residential. This future land use designation consists of areas occupied by multifamily housing, including higher density duplexes, townhomes, apartment buildings, and condominiums. Densities exceeding 8 dwelling units per acre are encouraged in this future land use category, and high density single family may also be acceptable at 5.5 dwelling units per acre. I'll get to the density map in just a second. But I'm going to move on to the preliminary development plan that was submitted with the application and go on to the site characteristics review portion of the staff report. I'll note the layout, lot sizes, and setbacks. So you can see this is the proposed layout. They're proposing to construct a 16-unit building for multifamily use on the property. And there would be one entrance to the property you can see just off there from Old Nashville Road Loop number 1, with the building situated kind of to the right side of the property. Under wastewater, we've noted that the property is located within 2,000 feet of the public sewer and will connect to sewer if the proposal is approved. And we've also noted, and I'll jump back to the aerial here, you can see that there are established tree lines running along both the north and southwestern property lines. Under site design and compatibility, I'll jump back to the density map here. So under surrounding density, staff has noted that there is a mixture of single-family residential and multifamily residential uses in the vicinity. Overall densities in the surrounding area range from 0.61 dwelling units per acre to 4.18 dwelling units per acre. And when this map was created, it included all of Covington Station. I'll jump back to the land use map here. You can see it's a mixture of single and multifamily. We did go ahead and calculate out the multifamily density, just if anyone is curious. So that's for the areas shown in red, and that density is 9.57 dwelling units per acre. The proposed density with this application this evening, with 16 units on 0.7 acres, results in a proposed density of 22.85 dwelling units per acre. Going back to the site design and compatibility review, under building materials, staff has noted that the existing multifamily structures on Old Nashville Road Loop number 1 are constructed of 100% brick. The existing single-family structures are constructed of brick or stone with some vinyl and metal mixed into facades that were added on after the original structure was constructed or as part of an accessory structure. Under building orientation, staff has noted that all of the existing residential structures on Old Nashville Road Loop number 1 contain a front facade oriented toward Old Nashville Road Loop number 1. And then under proposed open space, I will note that there is a typo. The development plan conditions, which I'll get to in just a second, actually require a minimum of 40% open space. So that is more than the minimum 15% that is typically required in the proposed RM4 zone. Speaking of development plan conditions, I'll go over those now. So number 1, all utilities will be located underground. Number 2, the property will be developed with a maximum of 16 multifamily dwelling units. Number 3, the property will be developed with one entrance to be coordinated with the City of Bowling Green prior to submitting for a building permit. Number 4, the exterior of all buildings located on the property shall be constructed of at least 80% brick, ephes, stone masonry, or cementitious material on all sides for each facade. Plain face block may be used but shall not be visible as a finished material. Number 5, the property will be developed with a community mailbox system and uniform site lighting. Number 6, lighting on the property will be down lighting not to exceed 16 feet in height, high-intensity discharge, shoebox luminary type, or wall-packed lighting designed to minimize light trespass onto adjacent residential property and shall not exceed 1/2 foot candles at the property line. Number 7, all buildings located on the property shall not exceed 2 stories. Number 8, the property will be developed with a minimum of 40% open space. And then number 9, I'll turn to your revised set of conditions. Number 9 states that all reasonable efforts shall be made to save all healthy trees along the north and southwest property lines, 5-inch caliper and greater as measured 12 inches above the ground. And then number 10, the side of the building facing Old Nashville Rd Loop number 1 will be built to have an appearance of a front facade. With that, I'll move on to the comprehensive plan review section on the next page. Staff evaluated 19 items from the Focus 2030 comprehensive plan. We felt that 9 of those items needed to be reviewed by this commission and that you should determine compliance with those items. So I'm going to touch on those now. First, LU 113, which deals with compatibility. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the area and if it complies with this item from the comprehensive plan. Next, we have LU 2 and LU 2.1, which deal with quality of development and character considerations. And the Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is a high-quality development that includes design standards tailored to preserve the character of the area. Next, LU 2.5 and 252, which deal with compatibility and neighborhood protection, and the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding area and if the proposed layout of the development will protect nearby established neighborhoods. Next, HN1 and HN1.3 deal with infill development. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development is a compatible infill project that preserves or enhances the character of the area. And then finally, HN 2.1 and HN 4 deal with suitability and housing options, and the Planning Commission should determine if the location of the planned development is suitable for the proposed housing type and if the proposed residences are believed to enhance the array of housing options available in the area. And with that, I'm going to jump back to page 1 and go over the staff points to consider. Number 1, the proposal is consistent with the future land use map and high density category. Next, the proposed development generally complies with the majority of the site characteristics review criteria. And then the proposed general development plan complies with the majority of the review criteria for site design and compatibility and meets the minimum requirements in the zoning ordinance. And then there's 2 extras at the bottom that you may not normally see. So first, it states that the existing multifamily residential structures in Covington Station are a mixture of 2 and 4 unit structures. And then the last point to consider, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed density is compatible with the density of the existing multifamily uses located in Covington Station. And that is all I have for the staff report, but I know that the applicant's here. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, do you have any questions before we hear from the applicant?
Quickly, would you review the density one more time for me? What is the density for the existing mixed, the existing units in I think they're just behind.
So I'll jump back to the density map here. So we've basically just outlined in the density section that the densities shown on this map for these various subdivisions range from 0.61 to 4.18 dwelling units per acre. And then in addition to this map, we also, if you go back to the land use map, so Covington Station, the red properties are multifamily use, and we calculated the density separate for just the red properties, and the density for those properties is 9.57 dwelling units per acre.
Which that would include the majority of all 2-story apartment or condominium townhomes that are on, what's that, Banyan Drive?
So everything shown in red on this land use map was included in that density calculation. If it was within the Covington Station subdivision.
Was it just gonna be one building? And they're gonna tear the other building, the current building there, tear that down?
Yes,
and
that's
build
my
one large
understanding,
building?
that the existing structure would be removed, and then they are planning to construct one 16-unit building. Mm-hmm.
Questions, commissioners? Thank you, ma'am. We'll
Thank
hear
you.
from the applicant. Do you have anything you'd like to add for us? The applicant? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Generally, I agree with everything that Rachel said.
We'll get your name and address
Oh, I'm
and swear
sorry.
you in.
I'm
Yes,
sorry, first time.
That's good. Yeah.
My name is David Whitty,
And your address, please.
561 Lakeside Lane, Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Swear to tell the truth.
Yes, ma'am.
There you go, sir.
Okay.
You go ahead.
I agree with everything that Rachel said. I thought she did a fine job presenting this. The structure that is there now, it's an older home. While it is livable, it's in need of several improvements. It is not very appealing to the eye at all. What I'm trying to do is build some housing here, some apartments. That would be mostly one bedroom, some two bedroom. It would be an improvement for this neighborhood. It would be something that's much more appealing to the eye than what is there now. And with the 1 and 2 bedroom, I'm hoping to be able just to provide some affordable apartment living for people that work maybe in the South Industrial Park area, NASCO, those type places.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Did you talk to any of the neighbors around this?
I did make an attempt to talk to Mr. Crabtree, who I believe is here tonight. Went and knocked on his door. He was not at home. And that's the only attempt that I made.
Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? Yes, sir. Yes, we'll let you come to the mic and we'll get your name and address and swear you in and let you ask your question or make a statement. Yes, sir. If you could let him have the mic, we'll
Yes,
let
sure.
him, and if there may be something you'll be able to answer. Yeah.
My name is Matthew Crabtree. I live at 3865 Old Nashville Road. I own 3865 Old Nashville Road, and I also own 3851 Old Nashville Road.
And you swear to tell the truth?
I swear to tell the truth.
Yes, sir.
There's not enough room to put that many apartments on that complex. I mean, there's a house takes up the whole yard right now, and putting that many on that road, on that end of that street right there, it's going to be very difficult. You can't drive I've helped many semis back out of that road because they can't turn around back there. I've had them take out my mailbox because they couldn't turn around. The apartments across the street, I have problems with them all the time. There's one right now that's got a floodlight on it that puts my property in daylight at midnight. If they build those apartments next door to me, the sound and problems I'll have will be almost impossible to take care of. Because, I like my privacy. And if they build those apartments, they're going to put floodlights on them that's going to shine over on my property. I see no way in the world that they can build that many apartments and that many parking lot on that little bitty 7/10 of an acre.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir.
By the way, can I ask, if they do pass this, can I get a privacy fence put up?
That would be something that you could negotiate with the property owner now. I mean, that would be up to him.
Okay.
Mhm. Yes, sir.
Mr. Whitty, what do you propose to put between you and them? Would you put a privacy fence or buffering, or what do you propose to
I'd be
help
with-
your neighbor?
I'd be in agreement to put a privacy fence. Any other questions, or?
But we'll need to get that onto your development plan. The conditions that add that.
Maybe a question for staff. Have we done parking calculations on this?
We have, and actually, I was just looking at that, and I think I'm losing my mind, and Jace, I think, is back there somewhere. I can't see him behind the podium, but I thought that he
He's
had
there.
sent me a revised layout. The one in your packet was one space short of the requirements, but he might have to refresh my memory, but it seems like he did send me a plan with the one extra space, and it meets the requirements. I may have forgot to forward that to you. I'm sorry.
One last question. This is a two-story structure?
Yes.
It's a privacy fence, wood, is that what you're agreeing to? A wood?
I mean, I'm open. If wood would be okay, if there was something more than wood required, such as a vinyl fence or something, then I would be willing to consider that as well.
Have anything?
I just don't want people coming onto my property, and I've had nothing but problems with people across the street. How do I get a copy of this proposal?
Coming right away. Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Whitty.
Sir.
I've added as paragraph 11 to your development plan conditions this language. The developer, that's you,
Sir.
agrees to construct a wooden privacy fence no less than 6 feet in height along, and somebody give me a compass direction, I'm sorry, north, along the north property line.
Yes, sir.
Can exceed beyond the front of the principal structure.
Anything considering the front yard would have to be 4 foot. Maximum.
It's because of the zoning ordinance requirement.
How far back to the building line would it be 4 feet?
Up to the front building line, it could be.
Nothing between those properties now. We've got trees. Is that, I mean, I don't know how old that aerial is to,
Those are from 2017.
yeah, that is, okay, gotcha. See it right there. Sorry. Sir.
Okay, thank you.
We have, just by show of hands, anyone in opposition? Any other questions from anyone in the audience? Nothing else, then I will ask for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon the general development plan docket number 2019-06-ZBG. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further request this motion includes summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witness public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Vogert, Commissioner Coppinger, Commissioner Balance,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Rich, Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am, the motion carried. Our recommendation will be for approval. Item number 3, 2019-07 Arcadia Bowling Green and Propapero 2 Bowling Green LLC have filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 6.5 acres located at 618 Lovers Lane from general business with a general development plan to planned unit development with a general development plan. And we'll have the staff report from Ms. Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair Runner. It's funny you just brought up the year of these aerials. This one is a little bit outdated since there's a building located on this property now, but this is the property we're talking about. We had a pre-application on November 6th of last year for this property. The applicants are requesting the zone change in order to add 9 independent living units on the property in conjunction with the existing senior living facility. And so, as Chair Runner's already said, the property is zoned GB, general business today, and the current use is multifamily. And this is in the Lovers Lane overlay, so we'll have a couple things in this staff report we don't normally have, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So the proposed density for this would ultimately be 1.54 dwelling units per acre. Now, this property was zoned from agriculture to general business in 2016. Property is designated as mixed use on the Lovers Lane overlay future land use map, and the proposed PUD zone is a potentially compatible zoning designation in that category and may be appropriate if the Planning Commission determines that the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding area. And so below that at the bottom we have our points to consider: that the proposal is consistent with the Lovers Lane overlay flume and mixed use category. The proposed development complies with the majority of the site characteristics review criteria, and the proposed general development plan complies with the majority of the review criteria for site design and compatibility and meets the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. So going on to page 2, the Lovers Lane overlay, as we've seen in the past, those categories are not necessarily defined, and so this one has a little more information than some of those categories do. The mixed use category allows 50% commercial, 25% office, professional, and unlimited residential uses. No industrial uses are permitted in this category. A couple things in the site characteristics review section. For wastewater, the existing senior living facility, which is shown here on the concept plan in blue, is served by sewer, and the proposed cottages depicted in orange on the plan will also be served by sewer if this application is approved. And then pointed out natural features below that there are existing trees located along the property line, the rear property line. Below that, site design and compatibility review, a couple other things to point out. Building orientation. The majority of the existing structures along Lovers Lane have a front facade oriented toward Lovers Lane. These proposed cottages depicted on the concept plan are oriented toward an internal courtyard rather than Lovers Lane. And below that, landscaping and screening will adhere to the zoning ordinance requirements for vehicle use areas and incompatible land buffers. The other thing, since this is a PUD, there are things that they kind of had to set themselves, including open space. The concept plan shows the maximum lot coverage for the proposed development to be 51.1%, meaning 48.9% of the property will remain as open space. And you can see there are courtyards shown there and outdoor spaces that are incorporated into the design. And another thing to point out, there are existing sidewalks along Lovers Lane, and GoBG Transit also serves this area. So below that, I'm going to go through the Lovers Lane overlay, Lovers Lane Urban Growth Overlay District policies and recommendations. The first one there is about the future land use map. The proposal complies with that. The one below that about this is about open space and lot sizes, housing type, and so the Planning Commission should determine if this proposal complies with that policy. One below that says that all single-family and multifamily residential development shall provide curb, gutter, sidewalks, including potential linkages to the greenway system. The preliminary plan shows that the development is currently served by Lovers Lane and Hunt Village Lane. If any additional internal streets are developed on the property, they must be built with curb, gutter, and sidewalks on at least one side of the street, as required by the subdivision regulations. This is in the case of a new development, like a new street. There are existing greenways and future trails planned in the area, but none that are directly adjacent to this particular site. Below that, policy there is about trees and natural features. The policy, or the proposal, complies with this policy. Going on to page 4, that next policy is about signage. The proposal complies with that as well. The next policy is about lighting. The proposal complies with that. And the last one is about access, and the proposal complies with that as well. Moving on to the development plan conditions. Number 1 is about building materials, 70% brick, stone, or other modern masonry materials, including cementitious materials such as hardy board. EFS cannot exceed 10% of, sorry, that's a typo. That says 10, that has 19 in parentheses. It should be 10% of any building exterior. Other materials such as aluminum composite, stucco, glass, precast concrete, or similar architectural accents may be allowed but may not exceed the 25% of any building exterior. Number 2, utilities will be located underground except for the Warren RECC Phase 3 electrical transmission line located approximately 70 feet west of the Lovers Lane right-of-way. Number 3, a maximum of 2 access points to Lovers Lane shall be coordinated with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. Number 4, lighting for parking areas and interior travelways shall be shoebox-style lighting designed to focus downward and to minimize light trespass onto adjacent properties. Number 5, the following uses shall be prohibited: vehicle repair, tattoo parlors, and packaged liquor sales. Number 6, all freestanding signage shall be limited to architectural designed monument signs subject to review by the Urban Design Review Board as set forth in the overlay district provisions of the zoning ordinance. On page 5, number 7, an overlay development plan must be submitted and subject to review of the Urban Design Review Board as set forth in the overlay district provisions of the zoning ordinance. Number 8, the overall development will consist of a maximum of 125 group living beds in the primary structure and 9 units of semi-detached or detached residential units as shown on Exhibit B. So that, I'll pause there. That is referencing this plan here. The blue would be the primary structure, which would have the maximum of 125 beds, and then those orange structures would be the 9 units mentioned there. You see that some are attached and some are detached units. And finally, development will maintain or replace existing vegetation within 20 feet of the southeastern property line. So on now to the category review. Just to point out a couple, LU2 and LU2-1, this body should determine if the proposal is a high-quality development that will protect the character of the area. LU28 and LU281 are about the Lovers Lane policy plan. It says that this application complies with the majority of the policies and generally complies with LU28 and LU281. HN1, HN13, this body should determine if the proposal is a suitable redevelopment project that will maintain or improve the existing character and pattern of development within the area. And HN21, HN4 on page 6, you all should determine if the proposal encourages a diversity and array of housing options. So I guess just to put it in summary, and the applicant may want to speak more to this, the orange structures there that are proposed to be new with this development are designed more like a transitional living for senior adults. So more like a single family, smaller house, and then, you know, as they age more, they can move into the larger facility. But there was no way to do that in the zone they were in, so they would have to go to PUD in order to make that work. So anyway, I believe that's all I have, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner?
When will they go before the Urban Growth Design Review Board? Is that after, if we say okay, do they go then, or does it have to go to the city first, or have they already talked to the Urban Growth Design Review Board?
I actually applied for that yesterday, so it'll be in next month's meeting. If this is approved, there'll be a condition that they can't start until the second and final reading with the city.
Any other questions? Other than I may have them hold one for me. Anything, do we?
Christian.
Oh, okay, we're just all. Do we have any opposition to this request? Do we hear from the applicant? Is anything you'd like to add or say? Nothing? No, any questions? No questions, no opposition, then I'll ask for a motion.
Make a motion to approve proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon a general development plan, docket number 2019-7ZBG, based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan, as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and actions and items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale? Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Coppinger?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston?
ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am, the motion carried. Our recommendation will be for approval. Thank you. And our last item, docket number 2019-08ZBG, 979 LLC and Tommy Hunt have filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 14.2 acres located at 0 Nashville Road, bounded by McClellan Road and Mitch McConnell Way, from highway business with a general development plan to light industrial with a general development plan. And we will have the staff report from Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Chair, Runner, and Commission. We had a pre-application conference for this property on January 11th of this year. And as you said, the application is to subdivide the property into 4 lots and develop a mixture of light industrial uses. The aerial you see on your screen there, we've seen this property quite a bit here lately. This is a portion of the Franklin Berry property that was kind of been a hot item this past couple years here. Moving along, looking at the existing zoning, the current zoning is highway business. Agriculture was the original zoning of the property. It was rezoned from agricultural to business in 1998 and has remained a business, form of business till this application. Future land use, it is in the mixed-use commercial future land use map category. The proposed light industrial zone is a potentially compatible zoning designation in this mixed-use commercial flume category. Moving along, looking at the existing land use, I'm not going to spend much time on this map because this one's changing quite rapidly. It's shown as agriculture, but there's quite a few proposals we've had lately that have changed the kind of the landscape of that area. I'm going to move on to page 2 to the site characteristics review and just touch on a couple things there. Looking at the preliminary development plan that you see before you on your screen with the lot layout, sizes, and setbacks. The proposed layout is shown. The proposed lots will be served by internal streets and laid out generally as shown before you. A couple of other items to note in this review category, the natural features. There is a mature tree line located along the northeastern property line, and the applicants have addressed preservation of a portion of those trees in their development plan conditions we'll touch on in a minute. Another note, prime farmland. This property contains a soil type that is designated as prime farmland, but also this application generally complies with the majority of the items in this site characteristic review. Moving on to the site design and compatibility review, looking at the surrounding architectural features, there's a mixture of commercial, industrial, single-family residential, and multifamily structures in the area, both constructed and currently under construction and proposed. So we've got quite a mixture here. Looking at building materials review, the majority of the structures in the area are metal with other modern masonry materials also mixed in, and the applicants have committed in their development plan conditions to have similar materials. Again, we'll touch on those in just a second. Building orientation, it's kind of becoming a staple in all of our staff reports here that we suggest any new structures on the property be oriented toward the newly proposed internal street or oriented towards a roadway. Moving on to the development plan conditions that the applicants have supplied to help describe their compatibility to you. I'll go through these quickly. There are 8 of them. Number 1, the development plan conditions replace any previously recorded binding elements. Number 2, the property will be served by an internal street as generally shown on Exhibit B, which is what's on your screen. Freestanding signage will be monument style with a height no greater than 15 feet. Proposed utilities will be underground. No lot will be used for passenger terminals, overnight accommodations, bar or lounge, or any sale of alcoholic beverages by the drink except in a restaurant. Also prohibited is adult entertainment, any sale or display or a rental of pornography or adult books, a bingo parlor, tattoo parlor, or sales and manufacture of mobile homes. Number 6, all facades shall be at least 60% brick, stone, precast, concrete, fiber cement board, or architectural metal panels. No facade should be constructed of plain face block. Number 7, building height on the property shall be limited to 75 feet, exclusive of elevator shafts. And number 8, trees with a caliber of 8 inches or greater located within 15 feet of the northeastern property line shall be maintained. Moving on to page 4, looking at the Focus 2030 Comprehensive Plan Category Review, staff evaluated the 12 applicable goals, objectives, or action items listed there for you. With those considerations, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area and if the proposal is of a high-quality development that will protect the character of the area. The others there are listed there for your reference. So again, just a review summary. The applicants are proposing to develop the property with light industrial uses, including a warehouse, contractor, office, or workshop, light manufacturing, and contractor wholesale or retail services. And again, the proposal complied with the majority of our review criteria. We'll wrap up. I'll jump right back to the existing zoning map real quick, and if I can find the mouse here. Just point out, so the property outlined in red is the property we see. You see kind of the edge of the South Industrial Park here. All of this color here is already zoned heavy industrial, and then we had a proposal where this parcel here was split zone with the front being highway business and light industrial a couple of weeks ago. So the property is surrounded on those 3 sides by either heavy or light industrial already. As you can see there, that property is currently zoned highway business, and they are proposing the light industrial. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I know the applicants are here if you have any questions for them.
Is there a turn lane? Is there a traffic turn lane going into that?
So back when this property was first auctioned off, we had several meetings and have had a series of meetings after, as we knew this property would be broken up and developed in different phases, that we got with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and coordinated all those access points. So from the very beginning, that has been done. So whether this particular area, I can't remember off the top of my head, but that has all been decided for this whole length of the Franklin Berry property from Old Nashville Rd Loop number 2 all the way to McClellan Road, and McClellan's getting improvements as this property develops too. There is a long right turn lane going into McClellan. I'm not sure how far that's supposed to extend, but I believe this has it's hard to tell from this aerial, but I believe this has This does have the middle left turn already, lane already in place there. Hope that answered your question, maybe a little longer than you expected.
Wonder the right turn lane.
The right, going into this property?
South. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, going south.
I'm not sure, I'm not sure on that. I'm not sure on that. Brian, no, okay. They might be able to address that further.
Other questions before we hear from the applicant? Thank you, sir. And we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Ms. Runner. My name is Kevin Brooks. I represent the applicant. We don't really have anything to add to the staff report, but we're happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, sir. Questions?
Kevin, you don't think they're requiring a right turn lane? Just out of curiosity.
I don't think so. I am aware that there was a whole lot of discussion back when this started, and there was a kind of a global solution, but I don't want to mislead you. I don't think the right turn lane goes that far from McClellan Road. I'm not positive, but I don't think so. There's the center turn lane. Yeah.
It does not, but through the development review process, as the actual uses of this property gets determined, I can imagine the state not wanting a right turn lane into this property with any kind of semi-traffic. I'm sure that will have to be determined at that point, but KYTC would have full control over that request.
Any other questions? Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? Question, yes, sir. If you'll come forward, we'll get your name and address and let you ask your question. Your name, sir?
I'm Raphael Wanguma. My address is 9083 Wood Circle. I own...
Swear to tell the truth.
I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. My land is our land, 7+. I'm a managing member of 7+. It's right there at the corner. If you can see the easement there going in, it's between my land and another gentleman's land going into the land. The problem I have is that if right there, that's it. The problem is the area is going, when we bought the property on auction, we actually bought it from the gentleman that's doing this development. It was supposed to be highway business, and majority of the properties on the front, as you can see, is highway business. And a couple of lots down the road by McClellan is going to be general business. And so I feel that doing the light industrial with the semis going, and if you look at the schematic that they put up, there'll be a lot of semi-traffic going right through that easement. And I'm being asked to pay a third of the cost to build that easement back there, and then there'll be a semi-traffic going there in and out. That would, damage the road. And then also, there's no traffic light, as the gentleman brought up before. You can imagine semis trying to get out of that property and make a left on Nashville Road. Are they planning to put a traffic light there down the road? And also, there's a development right behind the property where they're building houses right now. So I'm not so sure how this is all going to work out. That's my concern.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay. The property devaluement, how the semis are going to just be going in there. I'm going to be paying for a third of that, that land. Are they going to build that road strong enough to handle semi-trucks going in and out? So that's what I'd like answers to.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I might respond at least briefly to some of that. So this gentleman has one of the front lots, and his discussion about cost sharing is because he's entered into a contract to help pay for that road, a third of it. And it will be, obviously, have to be a road. If it's going to be accepted by the city, it's going to have to be capable of accepting truck traffic, and we know that, and it will. So there's going to be, we hope there's going to be truck traffic on that road. I will say also that just in general, this is going to be a much lower traffic generator than it would be for HB uses in there.
We'll make that a public road, is that at some point? Yes.
That will be a city
So,
street, yes, sir.
At some point, you wouldn't have to have the upkeep of that road if it didn't, if that.
Oh, that's right, that's right. We'll have to build it to city standards, yes.
Would you elaborate on this cost sharing? So,
Well, I shouldn't say too much because I don't know, Tim, but the three different property owners there who will all benefit from that road, which is really now, there's a private, I guess, easement going about halfway back, but now they've proposed to take a public street all the way back and just have agreed in some way on how to cost share for that.
so is it your understanding that that was a condition of the purchase of the property and this property in the front?
I
or is it
don't,
there's some
no, I
benefit
think
to
that's
them?
just an arrangement that they've reached since. Yes.
Have any other questions? Yes, we have another question. Yes, sir. And sir, if you will give us your name and address.
I will. I'm Raphael's twin brother.
I
Just
could
kidding.
tell.
I didn't swear to tell the truth yet.
Yeah.
Travis Ayers, my address, 2502 Hobby Road, Franklin, Kentucky. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, sir.
I just had a question for clarification. Ben brought up something that said, when this traffic was done and when they talked about it at first and they didn't require a turning lane in, that was with an HB zoning. And so with it being a light industrial zoning, I didn't know if that would change that because my question was, I can't tell from that, and I don't know. I just put deals together for a living. But if that would end up taking land from the lot that Raphael owns, if that was required, if that would take that, or if you had any insight, and I mean, I know you can't make the call, but you all have much more wisdom than I do.
Yeah, so all I can say is that there's some ifs here and assumptions at this point, because I don't know what conversations has been had with KYTC or Bowling Green Public Works for that matter on this. So is there enough right-of-way there? Mr. Shirley might be able to answer that. There is some extra right-of-way there to put a turn lane that is off the property. Is it enough? I don't know and not qualified to tell you that. I do know that the Transportation Cabinet will be able to make that determination. Whether or not the city will even accept that as a public road, I don't know that either. And I don't know if those conversations have been had. So it is possible they would not accept that anyway, or they might. I really don't know. The only part I do know is that if lots are to be subdivided off of it, then it has to be at least a private street of a certain width, built to a certain standard. And in this case, it would be the highest standard and the thickest width, given the proposed industrial truck traffic. So that's all I can. That's the best I can do at this time.
I know. And other question was the back section of the adjacent property that is zoned light industrial. Obviously around, I guess, the northwest and northeast sides of that would be zoned heavy industrial, and that to the southwest side, zoned light industrial, I noticed that had binding elements. What those binding elements, do they, I mean, I know you may not have those with you or, on your phone or anything, or you don't have them memorized, but do those have any kind of height restriction? 75 feet seems a little excessive for maybe something that with the residential that's over there. I also have the property listed for the owners for sale that bought it. That's the old home and the barn. I'm representing those sellers as well. So just from a compatibility standpoint with adjoining properties, I didn't know what that might be.
So to try to answer that question in the best summary I know how is, there's a set of binding elements that deals with all of this Franklin Berry portion of this property. and it is probably one of the longest and most convoluted set of binding elements I've seen. On top of that, they've been amended twice. So there's no way I'm going to be able to tell you that tonight. There is some height restrictions, I remember, on some portions, but I'm not sure if it's on this section or not, so I can't answer that directly. The only thing I can answer, and I did write down, take me a second to flip through here and find it, the maximum height allowed by the zoning ordinance in the light industrial zone is 100 feet. And so that's why they proposing the limitation of a 25 feet less. The other section I know that has the height limitations is on that McClellan Road side. And and again, it's difficult because it's scaled back. The further you go back, the higher you can be. So, but I think it is 80 feet as well. But that's on a completely different section. So.
Down, I know it's late. Thank y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, sir?
Well, let me just say this. We haven't surveyed for a new right-of-way out there because it had not been asked. We think there's enough right-of-way out there for another lane. If Transportation Cabinet requests it, then we think there's room for it.
Other questions from anyone in the audience? Any opposition to this request? Just questions? Okay. And nothing from the commissioners? I'll ask for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon the general development plan docket number 2019-08ZBG. Based upon the testimony and the documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objective items and with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include the summary of evidence testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Second, please. Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Rich? Commissioner Vitale? Yes, Commissioner Balance? Yes, Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Coppinger? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay? Commissioner Warren? Commissioner Warren?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried. Our recommendation will be for approval. New business, sir. Anything for us? Anything from the commissioners? Nothing? Then meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.